I'm a puppet. I'm a rag doll. My arm is totally uh, relaxed because I'm fighting the gravitational force of the mass of the arm, wanting to pull it down, having to use forearm muscle to pull it up. In this case, I'm using a string, a shoelace, to pull up the arm at the wrist. And so my arm and fingers are completely stress-free like the rag doll. Okay? So why am I doing this? Because I want to show what the efficiency of motion is under the zero stress and show what happens when we're pulling up on the wrist and arm and hand with an alternate source of anti-gravitational force, all right? So when we do that, we have, just free-floating fingers, free-floating wrist, free-floating upper arm, and we're controlling it all right here, all right? So now let's place the hand on where the little finger is on C5, and the fifth finger is on F4 below that. And let's see what happens when we want to pull the center of mass of the string. Let's line up the string with C5 right here. See, it's lined up with C5. So I'm going to line up that string with C5, and I'm going to pull. When it's lined up with C5, I'm going to pull on the hand. Look what happens to the hand. The center of the hand, wrist wants to naturally rotate this way, and the center of mass of the weight of the fingers and wrist and arm are lined right up on C5. So we know that to get maximum hammer velocity, we need to have mass times acceleration. To do that, F equals ma, Newton's law. So in order to get maximum mass, we would need minimum acceleration of force to get the maximum force on that note. So that means we should be lining up our mass on the note that we're interested in to have minimum effort. So let's just line up that hand right on C5 there. We're going to get a natural rotational arch this way, and we have an arch this way, so we have a three-dimensional arch by doing that. And let's just keep the little finger right on the surface of C5 and not even lift it, and just let a little bit of rotation of the wrist go down on that note. And then we're totally released on the tension here because we're holding up the tension of that note with this string. So we're not even holding that down at the 50 gram minimum pressure to keep the key down. We're getting the 50 grams of pressure by countering the weight right up here in this string. So complete relaxation of the little finger now. It's not even working to hold it down. The other fingers are totally at rest. The arm is free floating, and we're all good. Now, we can get more sound by either lifting the little finger to get a higher attack level, or we can turn the wrist a little bit this way to get sound, or we can do a combination of both. If we turn the wrist a little bit and we release, we got a higher dynamic. If we lift the finger a little more and turn the wrist, we get even a higher dynamic. Notice in each case, I didn't need to have this kind of fancy schmancy kind of motion of the wrist down and then up and then down and then up. That's all wasted motion. And we're not doing ballet, we're doing piano. And we're not here to entertain people's eyes, we're here to entertain their ears and their souls and their heart. They can close their eyes and listen to our performance. We don't want them to be distracted with ballet. You don't need that. You just can get all the sound you need by being fairly close to the surface and having minimum motion, if you're efficient. And this is one way of achieving the efficiency. Now, if we line up, let's say we want to line up the third finger, which is on A4, and we pull the string over toward A4, like this. We're pulling our hand now our hand is sort of in the middle, and we do the same thing. We just kind of keep the A4 on the surface of the key and just push down, and we get a beautiful pianissimo. And the force is so low that we don't need to, have all of that kind of rebounding. If we go more force by saying goes to the key, yeah, we're going to get a little impulse of reaction, a little impulse down and up, but that's a natural motion. It's not this kind of exaggerated motion. It's just a natural motion. And so we could think then, if we want to play a descending scale from 5 to 1, there's going to be a center of mass movement from 5 to 1. And I stay right on the surface of the key. Now let's get a higher dynamic and stay on the surface. Notice I got that was a good mezzo forte or maybe forte volume. I got out of that, and I didn't even have to lift a whole lot. I didn't have to get all this arm weight that many of the schools of teaching talk about, the Russian school in particular. No offense to you Russians here. But that's unnecessary in this case, in my case that I'm demonstrating. So minimum motion, maximum efficiency means mass to be centered on the note that you're interested in. And that's a pretty simple principle. It's Physics 101.